St. John, the 10th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because the hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. The Gospel of the Lord. So here we are in the 10th chapter of John, just a couple weeks after we have celebrated Jesus' resurrection. However, I think it's important to note that this reading that we have today is sequentially before the resurrection in John. So you would think that post-resurrection, right? We are post-resurrection Easter people, that all this business about the sheep and the shepherd, the gatekeeper and the gate, the flock and the scattered, you would think that now we would have it totally figured out. But is it the lost sheep or the sheep that Jesus lays his life down for? And is everybody a sheep? Like all the people in the entire world, since it says that there are other people that don't belong to the fold? And I also feel like post-resurrection, if everybody is Jesus' sheep, then how come the sheep still seem to be scattered to the ends of the earth? And not only that, how come the sheep seem to be in opposition with one another? Because the hardest part for me in this whole gospel reading, and I think it is the part that John meant to be the most comforting and the most unifying and the most inspiring, is when he says there will be one flock and one shepherd. I think that's John's main point. See, this account prior to the crucifixion can be read as a foretelling of Jesus' death and resurrection. But today, the question that gnaws at me post-resurrection in relation to this story is how are we supposed to be one flock under one shepherd if the sheep don't agree on what the shepherd looks like, acts like, or sounds like? Because today we have flock against flock, herd against herd, religion against religion, race against race, political affiliation against political affiliation or system, and we even often have shepherd against shepherd. Yep, we have Jesus against Jesus. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm sure that all of you have had the same experience where you'll read something or you'll hear something about Jesus that sounds completely contrary or foreign to your understanding of Jesus. It doesn't sound at all like the Good Shepherd that you know. Or you'll read something or hear something from a different religion or from somebody who doesn't believe in God at all, and it sounds completely familiar. It sounds completely like Jesus, just like the Good Shepherd you know. With the thousands of different versions and voices of Jesus out there, he almost comes across as schizophrenic in today's day and age. And the church claims to be God's voice, to speak for Jesus. And I don't want to undermine that theological premise, that the church is empowered by God to speak and act in God's name. But I do want us and all people and organizations that claim to speak for God to be very, very careful with that power. See, I'm not comfortable with the church being likened to the shepherd because there seem to be too many shepherds running around out there herding too many sheep into separate flocks and pens. Now, John may have used sheep and shepherd to tackle his theological premise on unity and sacrifice, but I have my own image that I would like to try out today, and we'll see how the technology works, as you all know. And maybe shaky at times. And it involves Big Bird.
My name is Carol Spinney.
Number 3.
My name is Carl Spinney.
Funny, I watch him all the time and I don't recognize him. But here's Carl Spinney's story. I, Carl Spinney, am Big Bird on an educational and entertaining children's television show, Sesame Street. Although I am of average height myself, Big Bird towers some 8 feet in the air, thus being the tallest and certainly the fluffiest television star in history. For those unlikely few of you who have never seen Sesame Street, let me explain that Big Bird is a sweet, lovable creature, a bit prone to making mistakes, but so delighted when he manages to learn to count or to say his ABCs. However, Big Bird is not the only role I play on Sesame Street. When I'm not wandering around in masses of bright yellow feathers, I can be found living in the most famous trash can on television, the home of the irascible, irritable, people-hating Oscar the Grouch. Signed, Carol Spinney. I'm going to go to a man who knows a good bird when he sees one. Gene Rayburn.
Thank you, Gary. Number 2, what union do you have to belong to do this TV show?
The American Federation of Television and Radio Artists.
Number 3, who created the character Big Bird?
Jim Henson.
Who he?
Who is Jim Henson?
Yeah.
The creator of the Big Bird.
Oh, I see. Number 1, who is it on Sesame Street who says, Cookie?
That's the Cookie Monster.
The what?
The Cookie Monster.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, what awards has this show won? Can you name 2 of the awards?
Yes, the Peabody Award and a couple of Emmys.
And number 3, what TV studio was it actually done in, do you know?
It's the Teletape Studio over on 52nd Broadway.
And number 1, how long does it take to put together one show? Do you do 2 or 3 shows in one day?
We do 2 or 3 shows in one day. It varies.
And how many a year do you do?
I was in 145 last year.
So we're going to stop there. I'm sure you guys could all get into watching the entire show to tell the truth. But I'm sure watching that, it totally cleared up how that connects with the shepherd and the sheep for me, right? Sometimes people ask me, like, how do you come up with these random things and I don't really know, but I'll read something like, oh, this will totally clear up the shepherd and the sheep. Well, I know that initially this video and Jesus and a flock of sheep don't seem to fit together. They seem to have nothing in common. But if you think about just that brief clip that I showed you, there are 3 people that are introduced, and they all say that they're real Big Bird. And all of them know all about Carol Spinney, the guy inside Big Bird. They've studied him, they have tried to walk in his shoes, they sort of formed their little life there around him, but in the end, there is only one person that had invested his whole life into being Big Bird. Only one person who really was and is and ever will be Big Bird. In the end, 2 of the 3 are sheep, and there is only one shepherd. Well, if you've ever seen this show when it was in its heyday, you know that at the end of the television show, the host proclaims, will the real so-and-so, so in this case, will the real Carol Spinney, please stand up? And then suddenly it's crystal clear who the real person is. And I say all of this to say, because I wonder if sometimes, and I mean this sort of collectively as a we, if we as religion and society and in political systems, if we don't get caught up in debating who the real Jesus is, and then we subsequently get sucked into trying to be the shepherd, instead of sticking to what Jesus needs us to be, which is a flock, not just sheep, but Jesus needs us to be a flock. Just as there's no separate singular word for the word sheep, there's no way you can be an individual Christian. We're not separate from one another, but we belong together and to each other. When Jesus brought the Samaritan woman into the fold, the flock changed, because initially the sheep didn't think she was the right caliber of woman. And when Jesus brought the blind man into the fold, the flock changed, because even those who were thought to be unclean were accepted. And when Jesus brought the tax collectors into the fold, the flock changed because even the dishonest were welcome. See, the shepherd is hell-bent on forming one flock, which means all those sheep that I disagree with, that I don't like or don't understand, that I may not even think belong. Well, Jesus is bringing them in. And if we take this Bible part seriously, according to Jesus, they are already part of the flock, already part of the fold. They already know Jesus. So since Jesus is serious about bringing other sheep into the fold, it stands to reason that there will continue to be transformations within the flock and vast differences between the sheep. And it's actually a very, very good thing. Even if it feels challenging or uncomfortable, when differences arise within the flock, sheep may have differing views over issues, large issues like immigration or the understanding of sexuality or the position on war or even their understanding of salvation. But ultimately, the Good Shepherd brings about abundant life to the sheep not because they share the same beliefs, but because they are united by His love, and therefore their love of one another, despite differences or disagreements. If you remember Carol Spinney, incidentally, does anybody know which one was the real Carol Spinney? Number 2. Yeah, number 2 was. So you can go home and Google it if you want to see the rest of the episode. But if you remember Carol Spinney, you know what actually differentiated him from all the others? It was nothing you could see up there, but it was all the kids' lives that he touched. None of the other people up there could ever claim that. This week, I sort of joked around with a few people that this week's sermon is going to be brought to you by Big Bird, which I know seems very rudimentary, and I sort of felt like the next thing I should do is like live out the letter J for Jesus, and the number 3 for the Trinity. But what actually defines the Good Shepherd is this: love. Sacrificial love. And that is a lesson that could have been taught on Sesame Street. But it is also what Jesus laid His life down for. Because love is not a political statement, it is not a theological statement, or a religious statement. Love is the sound of the Good Shepherd's voice. And when you hear that or see that, that is Jesus.